She grew up in the Christian patriarchy movement, homeschooled, expected to live at home until she turned 18, could only marry someone her father chose for her, no college, no career. Her life was to serve the men around her. As Kate West got older, she realized this was not how life was supposed to be. She broke free. She just released her memoir, recounting her childhood and sharing her story. It's called Rift, and she's joining us this morning with more about her incredible story. Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about your history and what it was like to grow up the way you did.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian home, very conservative, and the older I got, the more we got into the Christian patriarchy movement, which is this ideology that men are in charge and women submit. And so growing up, I was told my only purpose in life was to be a wife and a mother. So that would mean nothing after high school graduation except waiting to get married.
Yeah, and so talk about your transformation a little bit, because I mean, it really was from such a young age. This was really, I mean, you were shamed essentially into doing what you needed to do in the eyes of your family, and where your realization came and how that started and what that looked like.
Yeah, you know, I think I always had secret dreams of something different. I remember wanting to go to college, wanting to study piano, and I kept those to myself. But it wasn't until I went through the whole courtship process, which is the alternative to dating that we did, when my father broke that off, I realized I had no control over my life, no decision-making power, and that's when I thought, I think I want something different.
Yeah, and talk about writing this book. I mean, I'm sure this was probably, you know, cathartic, but also extraordinarily hard. What's that like?
Yeah, you know, when you're writing about traumatic memories, they're not always in a linear narrative in your head. And so that was difficult to take out the pieces of my story and try to shape them so that it would make sense for somebody else. But I was thankful for support from therapists and friends, and even some family. So that was what stabilized me as I wrote it.
Yeah, and so what do you hope people take away who get to read this?
I hope first that anyone who's been through abuse or high control religion will feel seen and that they're validated, that their story matters. And I hope that people who haven't experienced that will have some more compassion for those who have and be able to help prevent this kind of abuse from happening.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part of it too, that, you know, I have not gotten too far into it, but reading it, I'm like, wow, this happens. And for someone who hasn't lived it or who doesn't know anyone like this, this is something that people don't think about or understand necessarily. And so talk about some of the things that you do talk about, some things in here about what to look out for. What should people be aware of?
Yeah, I think for one thing, homeschooling, I was homeschooled. We need better regulations on homeschool kids so that they have interactions with mandatory reporters, for instance. That's very rare. And so things like that, isolated children, and also women who are living at home after they turn 18, ask them questions, make sure that they're okay with that and that they want to live that way.
Yeah. And so how are you doing today? How do you feel about putting this out? And I mean, here it is, right?
Yeah, it's super exciting. It's been a long road to be here. I left 11 years ago, and writing my story was difficult, but I've met so many people along the way, and I feel much less alone than I did a decade ago.
Absolutely. And you have an event coming up. Let's talk about that if people want to come meet you.
Yeah, Thursday, May 9th at Schuler Books in Grand Rapids. We're having a book launch with Kristen Kobus-DeMay is going to be my conversation partner, and so we're going to be talking about the book and Christian patriarchy, and she has such a great historical context for my story, so I think it'll be really fun.
That's a wonderful opportunity for people to learn more, to meet you, to pick up a copy of the book. Obviously, you can grab it at Schuler Books. Thanks so much for being with us, Kate. Thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. The book signing right there, May 19th at Schuler, 6:30 p.m. You want to learn more, head to schulerbooks.com or follow Kate on Instagram at Kate West Writes. We'll be right back.